So I want to give you all an update, and this is something that came through from TVJ's perspective, right? So there's the concern when it comes to the men and the 4x100 meters. Now there's a lot of talks as it relates to whether or not Bryan Levell will be a part of the men's 4x100 meters. Of course, originally when the team was announced, he was not a part of the relay pool. Now, a lot of people, didn't understand my perspective when I was, losing my mind, because I know Jamaica, and I know that when you don't see an athlete in the relay pool, you pretty much have a block road to get them to be a part of the relays. Now, a few people mentioned, oh, you all remember what happened in 2017. Yes, I vividly went through 2017. I remember we had to practically protest to get Omar McLeod on that relay team. So, yes, even though you can use any athlete that is a part of the team to be a part of the relay and doesn't necessarily have to be in the relay pool, we know how Team Jamaica runs things. So the moment I didn't see Bryan Levell, I said there is trouble. And track is, of course, there is trouble. Now, I got this information some time ago, but I was kind of keeping my fingers crossed that, the best would work out at the end of the day. But, yes, sometimes I'm delusional, trackies, and it is what it is. So, trouble seemed to have reared its head when it came to Bryan Levell's participation at the World Relays for the 4x100 meters. Not sure exactly what happened, but there's something that happened. And apparently, Bryan Levell doesn't want to be a part of the relay until that issue is rectified. Now, as I said, some new information coming through from TVJ's and they tried to speak to Bryan Levell about it. They tried to speak to his coach as well, but they did not respond. As things stand right now, though, Bryan Levell, since he got to the camp, has not turned up to be a part of anything really related, right? So, given the fact that it's a relay and you literally have to practice with all the other athletes that are competing, you can't just turn up and run. He's also a young athlete as well, so it means that he's not as seasoned as some of the other athletes that you may give a pass and say, okay, if they weren't a part of the relay practice session, they may still be able to be competent, right? So, given the fact that he has not made himself available any at all, right? It means that unfortunately Bryan Levell will not be competing in the men's 4x100 meters. And this actually is for the best trackies, because if he hasn't practiced with them to this point, then at this particular moment, then it seems as though it may never happen. Because at the end of the day, again, we want fluidity, right? You want to make sure that the athletes have some level of working together happening there with the relays. And if he's not practicing, then yeah, more than likely he's not going to be a part of the relay. And as I said, I'm not against it because he's not practicing with the team. No, this is where I have an issue though. They said that Bryan Levell hasn't made himself available any at all when it comes to, getting the team qualified for the 4x100 meters. And I call cap on that. I call lies, because Bryan Levell did make himself available to represent Jamaica at the World Relays. They put him on the mixed 4x100 meters. That is where he competed. So the narrative and the notion that is floating around there that he hasn't made himself available, in my opinion, is a lie. Now, as it relates to the other, relay, qualifications that came up, given the fact that the issue happened at the World Relays and it wasn't rectified, then he hasn't made himself available since then. And we're at the World Championships now, and yeah, he still hasn't made himself available. So unfortunately, it seems as though, as I said, he will not be competing in the men's 4x1. And on one hand, as I said, it's tough that he won't be competing, but on the other hand, I get it, because we don't want any spills at this particular moment. We want our team to go out there and run competitively. And sometimes as well, it's not necessarily the fastest man out there that will be able to run, the best leg. We've seen with Michael Freighter over the years. I've credited him so much, especially when it comes to the men's 4x100 meters. That world record set in 2012, he did his thing on the backstretch, and he was by no stretch of the imagination the fastest man on the team. Actually, I think in 2012 he was probably the slowest man on the team, and he did the biggest job on that leg on the backstretch. So with that being said, I think, the likes of Ryan Ford, we've seen them, practicing. So he will be able, in my opinion, to be competent enough to give us a solid, third leg. And that still keeps us in the runnings for gold, right? But it will be challenging, trackies. Make no mistakes about it. It will be challenging, but we just have to put our best foot forward at this particular point and, yeah, hope for the best. You know what I mean? Good vibes is what we're looking for. So yeah, we really want to continue that throughout.